Middle East has long been shaped by conflict, shifting alliances, and political instability. For decades, those tensions produced consequences that extended well beyond its borders. On September 11, 2001, those consequences arrived in the United States.
We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
Nearly 3,000 people were killed in a coordinated series of attacks, the deadliest act of terrorism ever carried out on American soil. The group responsible was al-Qaeda, and its founder, Osama bin Laden, became the central figure of one of the most extensive manhunts in modern history. This is the story of what happened next. This is the story of Operation Neptune Spear. On the morning of Tuesday, September 11, 2001, at 8:46 a.m., 4 commercial passenger aircraft were hijacked in the eastern United States. 2 struck the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York. 1 hit the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. A 4th crashed into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers attempted to overpower the hijackers. The attacks, coordinated by al-Qaeda, killed 2,977 people, including civilians and first responders. It was the deadliest single terrorist attack in recorded history. The United States formally attributed the attacks to al-Qaeda and identified Osama bin Laden as the architect and operational leader behind them. He was not merely a symbolic figure. He had financed, planned, and directed the operation. From that point on, Osama bin Laden became the primary target of one of the most extensive manhunts in modern history. To understand why he reached this position, it is necessary to examine both who he was and what he had built. Born in 1957 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, bin Laden was the son of a wealthy construction businessman. He was educated and grew up in conditions of considerable privilege. In the late 1970s, his worldview began shifting toward militant Islamism, an ideology that would go on to define his actions. When Soviet forces invaded Afghanistan in 1979, bin Laden traveled to the region to support the resistance. Initially, he provided financial backing, but he later became more directly involved in the conflict. In 1988, as the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan, bin Laden formalized the network of fighters and financiers he had helped assemble. He called it al-Qaeda, Arabic for the base. The organization was founded with a clear ideological mission: to continue armed conflict in the name of a particular interpretation of Islam with Western nations, especially the United States, identified as primary adversaries. Over the following decade, al-Qaeda carried out a series of increasingly coordinated and deadly attacks. In 1998, bombings of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania killed more than 200 people. In 2000, a suicide attack on the USS Cole in Yemen killed 17 American sailors. These attacks were part of the lead-up to September 11th. In October 2001, the United States launched a military campaign in Afghanistan targeting al-Qaeda and the Taliban government that had provided it safe haven. During the Battle of Tora Bora in December 2001, U.S. forces came close to capturing bin Laden, but he managed to escape across the border into Pakistan. After that, his whereabouts became unknown. The years that followed were defined by one of the most intensive intelligence operations in American history. Shortly after the September 11th attacks, the CIA began collecting information on key individuals connected to or providing support to Osama bin Laden. Reporting made clear early on that he communicated through a carefully managed network of couriers rather than through electronic means. Bin Laden had effectively removed himself from the digital world. No phone calls, no emails, no electronic footprint of any kind. He had structured his communications to leave the smallest possible trace. Between 2002 and 2005, at least 2 al-Qaeda prisoners provided information about Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, a courier believed to be operating in close proximity to bin Laden. Al-Kuwaiti was the operational alias of Ibrahim Ahmed, also known as Arshad Khan. Intelligence officials assessed that he was traveling with or near bin Laden on a regular basis. But knowing a name and locating a person are very different things. For years, al-Qawadi's identity was known primarily by his alias, and his physical whereabouts remained unclear. The pivotal development came in 2010. U.S. intelligence intercepted a phone call made by al-Qawadi, a call that placed him in a major city in Pakistan, directly contradicting prior assessments that bin Laden was concealed in remote tribal regions near the Afghan border. CIA paramilitary operatives located al-Qawadi in August 2010 and followed him to a compound in Abbottabad, a city in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, approximately 35 miles north of Islamabad. What they found there raised immediate and serious questions. After nearly a decade of searching, a concrete lead had emerged. The CIA led the effort to surveil and gather intelligence on the compound. Critical roles were also played by the National Security Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and the U.S. Department of Defense. The surveillance operation became so extensive that the CIA requested Congress reallocate tens of millions of dollars to fund it. What the CIA found in Abbottabad was not what the intelligence community had anticipated. The compound was located in Bilal town, a residential suburb of Abbottabad, a city in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Abbottabad was home to the headquarters of one of the brigades from the Pakistani Army's 2nd Division, as well as the Pakistani Military Academy, the country's equivalent of the United States Military Academy at West Point. The location was not a remote safe house in an ungoverned border zone. It was a structured, populated garrison city with a significant Pakistani military and institutional presence. Completed around 2005, the compound occupied a 3,500 square meter plot, considerably larger than surrounding properties. It was a substantial structure, estimated to have cost in excess of $1 million to build, and its construction date aligned with the period following bin Laden's disappearance from Tora Bora. The compound's physical characteristics stood out in the context of the surrounding neighborhood. High perimeter walls topped with barbed wire, double-entry gates, opaque windows, no visible internet connection, no landline telephone. Household waste was burned on site rather than placed out for collection, a practice inconsistent with the area's norms. The two registered occupants did not appear to be employed or to have any verifiable source of income proportionate to the size and cost of the property. Taken together, these features led the intelligence community to conclude that the compound was likely being used to shelter a high-value individual, one who had strong reasons to remain undetected. The CIA established a covert observation post in a rented property nearby. Over a period of several months, analysts conducted sustained surveillance of the compound and its occupants. During that surveillance, they identified a figure they referred to as the Pacer, an individual of comparable height and build to Osama bin Laden, who moved regularly through the compound's inner courtyard, but who was never observed leaving the outer walls. Despite what officials later described as an extraordinarily concentrated collection effort, no U.S. intelligence agency was able to obtain a photograph of bin Laden at the compound before the raid, nor a confirmed voice recording of the male resident occupying the structure's upper floors. In September 2010, the CIA formally assessed that the compound had been custom-built to hide someone of significance, and that bin Laden was likely residing there. The intelligence case was substantial. It was not, however, conclusive. To test their own conclusions, the CIA conducted a process known as red teaming, an independent review of the available evidence designed to challenge assumptions and identify weaknesses in the analysis. An administration official later stated that no alternative candidate fit the available intelligence profile as consistently as Osama bin Laden. The assessment held. By early 2011, the intelligence file had reached the highest levels of the U.S. government. President Barack Obama convened multiple sessions with his national security team to review the accumulated evidence. By March 2011, the CIA presented a consolidated assessment, estimating a 60 to 80% probability that the high-value resident inside the Abbottabad compound was Osama bin Laden. 3 operational options were presented for consideration. The first was an airstrike, a munitions strike capable of destroying the entire compound. The potential for civilian casualties was assessed as significant, and crucially, such an approach would provide no reliable means of confirming whether bin Laden had in fact been killed. The second option was a precision drone strike, targeting the pacer directly. This approach would limit physical destruction, but carried similar limitations in terms of battlefield identification, and the technology involved was not considered infallible. The third option was a direct assault, a helicopter-borne raid by a small team of special operations personnel who could physically enter the compound, positively identify the target, and secure intelligence materials in place. This option carried the greatest operational risk. It would require U.S. forces to enter Pakistani territory without the prior knowledge or consent of the Pakistani government, and the team would need to complete the mission before Pakistani military or security forces could respond. To prepare for this possibility, members of the proposed assault team trained at a purpose-built, life-size replica of the Abbottabad compound. Constructed at a facility in North Carolina, planners also developed a version with adjustable interior walls to ensure the team could adapt to any configuration they might encounter on the ground. The unit selected for the mission was the Red Squadron of the U.S. Navy's Naval Special Warfare Development Group, commonly known as SEAL Team 6. The Red Squadron had recently returned from a deployment in Afghanistan and was scheduled for standard leave, a circumstance that allowed its members to conduct training for the operation without drawing attention. On the 29th of April 2011, President Barack Obama authorized the raid. The operation was formally structured as a surgical strike by a small special operations team with specific instructions to minimize collateral damage and reduce risk to non-combatants to the extent possible. The authorization had been issued. The official designation assigned to the mission was Operation Neptune Spear, a reference to the U.S. Navy SEAL Trident, the insignia of the Naval Special Warfare community. In Roman tradition, Neptune, god of the sea, carries a 3-pronged trident spear, the emblem adopted by the SEALs as their identifying symbol. At 11 p.m. local time on the 1st of May 2011, 23 Navy SEALs lifted off from the U.S. airbase at Jalalabad, Afghanistan, aboard 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters that had been modified with stealth technology to reduce acoustic and radar signatures. They were accompanied by a Pashto-speaking interpreter and a Belgian Malinois military working dog named Caro. 3 MH-47 Chinook heavy transport helicopters followed at a distance. One held its position just inside the Afghan border as a contingency. The other 2 proceeded to a forward staging point, approximately 50 miles northwest of Abbottabad. The flight was conducted at low altitude and high speed. The aircraft tracked through hilly terrain to remain below Pakistani radar coverage. Pakistani air defense systems did not detect the incursion. All helicopters crossed into Pakistani airspace without incident, and the Black Hawks advanced toward the compound. Then, on approach, one of the Black Hawks experienced an aerodynamic issue, likely caused by higher than anticipated air temperatures affecting lift, and the pilot was compelled to execute a hard landing within the compound's outer perimeter wall. The aircraft's tail struck the wall during the descent. No SEALs or crew members were injured. The fast rope insertion plan was abandoned. The second Black Hawk landed outside the compound's perimeter. The operation proceeded. SEALs first encountered al-Qaeda at the compound's guest house. He was killed in the exchange. His wife was wounded. CIA operatives had cut electrical power to the surrounding neighborhood. At the moment the raid began, the SEALs, equipped with night vision equipment, then breached the entrance to the main residential structure. Moving systematically through the building, They advanced floor by floor. Additional individuals were encountered and killed at various points during the sweep, including one of bin Laden's adult sons. A woman inside the compound was also killed during the operation. The SEALs pressed upward to the third floor. On the third floor of the compound's main structure, the SEALs encountered Osama bin Laden. He was shot and killed after resisting and reaching toward a weapon. He sustained fatal gunshot wounds to the head and chest. The helicopters had arrived at the Abbottabad compound at approximately 0:30 Pakistan Standard Time on the 2nd of May 2011. Despite the forced landing of one aircraft, the operation continued without significant disruption. Bin Laden was located and killed within approximately 9 minutes of the team's entry into the main building. Identification of the deceased was treated as an immediate operational priority. Initial identification was conducted by comparing physical characteristics and photographs of the individual killed in the raid against verified images of Osama bin Laden. The SEALs collected biological samples, including blood and bone marrow, for formal DNA analysis. DNA testing was subsequently conducted independently by both Department of Defense and CIA laboratories. The resulting profile was compared against a comprehensive genetic reference derived from multiple confirmed members of bin Laden's extended family. Officials later stated that the probability of a misidentification was approximately 1 in 11.8 quadrillion. The identification was considered conclusive, with bin Laden confirmed dead and the compound cleared. The SEALs collected available intelligence materials. These included laptops, external hard drives, USB flash drives, handwritten documents, and personal correspondence. Among them, what was identified as bin Laden's personal diary. The downed helicopter was destroyed on site by the team, in accordance with standard procedure for preventing sensitive military technology from falling into unauthorized hands. The wreckage it left behind was later examined by aviation and intelligence analysts. U.S. personnel remained on the ground for approximately 40 minutes in total before departing the compound. The following morning, bin Laden's body was transported to the aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson, operating in the Arabian Sea. Following Islamic funeral rites, his remains were buried at sea. Officials stated that the decision to conduct a sea burial was taken to ensure that no physical gravesite would be established that could serve as a focal point for followers.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
At 11:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, on the 1st of May, 2011, President Barack Obama delivered a televised address to the American public, announcing that Osama bin Laden had been killed in a U.S. operation conducted in Abbottabad, Pakistan, earlier that day.
Justice has been done.
On May 6th, al-Qaeda confirmed bin Laden's death through statements posted on militant online forums and pledged to pursue retaliatory action. In the United States, the announcement prompted public gatherings at locations including the area outside the White House and the site of the former World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. The reaction reflected the significance many Americans attached to the conclusion of the manhunt. The full significance of the operation, however, extended well beyond the immediate response. Materials recovered from the compound revealed that bin Laden had remained operationally active as al-Qaeda's leader during the years he spent in Abbottabad. Documentation indicated he had continued to provide strategic, operational, and tactical direction to the organization. He was not functioning as a figurehead. He remained the organization's directing authority In November 2017, the CIA released the contents of nearly 470,000 digital files, totaling 258 gigabytes, recovered from 183 separate electronic devices seized during the Abbottabad raid. The materials provided a detailed record of bin Laden's activities, correspondence, and personal life during his years of concealment. The death of Osama bin Laden represented a significant development in the United States' campaign against al-Qaeda. He was the organization's founder and its only commander throughout its operational history to that point. His removal eliminated a central source of the organization's strategic direction, financial networks, and recruitment capacity. The broader campaign, however, did not conclude with his death. Ayman al-Zawahiri, bin Laden's longtime deputy, assumed command of al-Qaeda in the months that followed. He remained in a position of leadership for more than a decade before being killed in a U.S. drone strike.
On Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri.
In Kabul, Afghanistan, on the 31st of July 2022, on the 10th of May 2011, Joint Task Force Neptune, the combined unit responsible for the Abbottabad operation, was awarded a Presidential Unit Citation, covering the period from March 17 to the 2nd of May 2011. Neptune Spear concluded a 10-year manhunt. It also generated a series of legal, diplomatic, and ethical questions, several of which remain without definitive resolution. The Pakistani government was notified of the operation only after it had concluded. Pakistan's official response was one of formal objection. Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani addressed Parliament, and the government issued a statement characterizing the operation as an unauthorized unilateral action, cautioning that it should not be regarded as a precedent applicable to any other state. Pakistan's military acknowledged what it described as shortcomings in developing intelligence on the presence of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, an acknowledgement that raised further questions about the extent of awareness, or the lack thereof, among Pakistani authorities. The U.S. government maintained that bin Laden had been concealed in Abbottabad without the knowledge of Pakistani officials, and that his location had been determined through independent intelligence collection conducted over several years. Pakistan did not accept that framing in full. The precise limits of Pakistani government knowledge and at what institutional levels have not been established on the public record. Following the operation, the U.S. government declined to release post-mortem photographs of Osama bin Laden. The decision was subsequently challenged through the courts under the Freedom of Information Act. In 2013, a three-judge panel of the United States Court of Appeals upheld a lower court ruling that 52 post-mortem images were properly classified at the top secret level and fell within an exemption to the Act's public disclosure requirements. The photographs have not been released to the public. In the early hours of the 2nd of May 2011, a U.S. military operation conducted inside Pakistani territory resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden, the founder of al-Qaeda, and the individual held responsible by the United States government for organizing the September 11 attacks. The operation was the product of nearly a decade of intelligence work involving multiple agencies across the U.S. intelligence community. It is worth noting that bin Laden had, by available accounts, been planning to relocate from the Abbottabad compound. The timing of the operation was not incidental to its outcome. What the operation concluded was a manhunt. The broader effort to counter al-Qaeda and affiliated networks was not resolved by a single event and did not end on that night. The legal questions Operation Neptune Spear raised regarding state sovereignty, the use of lethal force outside declared conflict zones, and the applicable standards of international law continue to be examined in academic, legal, and governmental settings. What is documented and verifiable is the operational record of those 40 minutes. For the nearly 3,000 people killed on the 11th of September 2001, and for the many thousands more affected by the conflicts that followed, the 2nd of May 2011 represented the conclusion of one significant chapter in a much longer sequence of events. Whether the strategic consequences of that night have contributed to greater long-term stability is a question that researchers, policymakers, and historians continue to examine. If this documentary was informative, if it gave you a clearer, more grounded understanding of one of the defining events of the early 21st century, consider subscribing to the channel. Every video we produce is built on verified sources, presented without exaggeration, and developed for viewers who value accuracy. If this video earned your attention, a like helps us reach more people who are looking for the same standard of content. Leave a comment below, whether it is a question, a perspective, or a topic you would like us to cover next. We read every one. The next documentary is already available. We will see you there. This has been Operation Neptune Spear. Thank you for watching.